Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar. I'm looking forward to getting started here. I want to welcome you. We will be having our webinar from about 12 o'clock right now until probably before 1 o'clock. We should wrap up about 5 or 10 minutes before that. As suggested on the slide here, you should hear some audio. If not, you can dial in with the access code. Probably more importantly is if you have any questions during our webinar, you have a control panel with the GoToWebinar screen you have set up, and you should be able to ask us any questions during the presentation and webinar, and we'll be happy to get some answers back to you. Again, welcome. My name is Dave Kyle. I'm with Ease Technologies, and with me is Pat Bubeck.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Well, I'm sorry, stepping on your conversation there, Pat.
That's
welcome.
Right. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, Pat is our cloud systems engineer. We're with Ease Technologies. We were founded in 1993. We provide managed and cloud services for small and medium businesses here in the Baltimore, Washington region. Are we ready to get started?
Absolutely.
Great, let's go. So our agenda, we want to talk a little bit about a traditional office and what infrastructures and most likely technologies you'll find in many small and medium-sized businesses. You know, as the title implies here, Demystifying the Cloud, we want to share some of the concerns many people have about using cloud services and help dispel some of those for everyone. And then also describe current cloud solutions that many folks can take advantage of and some that may be already using. And finally, demonstrate a virtual cloud desktop solution. And this is a solution that could be utilized whether you have Windows computers, Macintoshes, or even tablets. So we want to share some, I think, an innovative solution here for some really exciting capabilities with cloud services. And finally, 8 tips on how to share files securely on cloud services at the end for us. So let's talk about a traditional firm infrastructure. And a lot of times this is going back last 10, 15, 20 years about how a small, medium-sized business has their infrastructure set up. A lot of times there's limited mobility and access, very device dependent, meaning that we have conditions that if you have that office, you typically may be restricted to using certain types of platforms, Windows, certain versions of Windows, very facility dependent, meaning that if someone wanted to have access to certain servers, they would literally have to be in that office to have access to the complete set of services or databases or information that a company may be utilizing. We run into a lot of accountants, for example, that during tax season, people are confined to the office and can only be in the office to do that kind of work. And secondly, or lastly, one of the biggest restrictions of a lot of traditional infrastructures is scalability. And that's just, it's very difficult to add lots of people temporarily or and just whether it be servers or desktop systems or even licensing becomes very difficult for a lot of businesses. Pat, in supporting a lot of our accounts today, what kind of situations are you running into?
Yeah, I think the big one is the amount of moving parts you'd have in a standard environment. You have services like VPN. A lot of our customers use something like LogMeIn. And when all these are kind of meshed together, there's just a higher chance of things not working properly. There's a lot of different things we have to troubleshoot. It's kind of narrowing down where the issue may be. A lot of times we see physical issues with someone's laptop, a hard drive crashes, and there's days of downtime and data loss, which is probably the worst thing that can happen in a traditional setup, is actually losing your work.
Okay. So businesses today, of course, that are looking for ways to provide access to multiple users remotely with different desktop computers, whether it be PCs or Macintoshes, look at utilizing data and information on iPhones and iPads. Of course, with all that too, it's important to make sure the disaster recovery, security, and be able to scale their businesses are following up as well. And with all that too, we're also asked to keep the costs down. So, and these are very consistent conversations. Not everyone has all these at once, but a lot of businesses we're talking to is looking to find out ways, mostly to find out how they can accommodate people who are working from home, people who are temporarily working from home, or scaling their businesses. And cloud services is certainly a way for us to help provide some of those services for them. So let's talk about some of the issues that a lot of people have about the cloud. Oftentimes when we're talking to new accounts about utilizing these new services, we get certain objections about, it's not secure. It may be something that they feel would be too expensive for them. They can't use their current platform. Are going to have to invest in new hardware to accommodate this. And oftentimes people's misconception that it's not a proven technology. It's not only been around for a few years, and the cloud services are something that they're not quite ready for because it's not quite proven just yet. I want to share a little bit with you my perspective on the not proven technology concept of this. So, being in the industry for a little bit, I actually look at cloud services as being a pretty old concept, quite frankly. Some of you may have heard of the service CompuServe. CompuServe was founded in 1969, for example. I'm sure you're all familiar with America Online and even an older online service called Prodigy. These simple services these organizations provide were all through dial-up. And you think about how sophisticated AOL was when it first came out, and even CompuServe, providing email, providing access to certain databases, providing forums. These were all things that were out there for us literally 20 years ago or more, 30 years ago, but it was done through dial-up. Today with the internet, we have a greater pipe of access to information, including video and all the same services that were provided in CompuServe and America Online and Prodigy. So really the concept of a remote service or servers has been around for quite a while. The difference being that now we have access through them on the internet with a multitude of different devices out there. I want to talk about what we run into on a more frequent basis with our current accounts, Pat, and many businesses that we run into. What are some of the things that you're running into when you're first talking to them about cloud services, or what do you see when we go in there?
Sure. I think you guys can all see this picture here, and you may be looking at it going, well, that looks a lot like what I have. And that this is pretty standard for a lot of our customers that we first take on board. We like to ask them, before we even take them on as a client, can you answer these questions? Where are your servers? Are they locked up? Does anyone in your office have access to them? Is there a key code? Is there, can the cleaning crew get in there? The big one that I like to ask is, how good are your backups? Can you tell us with confidence that they're backed up regularly? When was the last failure? Is there a full backup from, let's say, even a year ago? Most companies can't really answer that question. And the big one is, how long would your company be down in the event of an emergency? Is there a time that you could say, we'd be back up online in a week? Is it 2 days? Is it a day? These are all important questions, and a lot of times to get that kind of recovery time, it can be expensive in a standard environment.
Yeah, and I think about even like this past winter, you have multiple situations that are out of your control. And most folks are fearful of fire being an issue in your building, and I actually think of fire not being the big issue of controlling the servers and desktops and business continuity. But a building across the street from us here in Columbia, there's a six-story building, but the pipes froze on the top floor this past winter, and pipes burst. And it happened over the weekend when everybody came back in on Monday morning. 6 floors of water were inundated throughout that building. And again, no one really expected it. No one was around. No one was able to catch up with it. So there was water running through this building for a whole weekend. Not in ours, but across the street. Now, fortunately, there wasn't a lot of people in those offices. But point being is that that's a big hurdle to cross. I get through when something that devastating can happen. So again, it points to cloud services being a great alternative to consider for a lot of businesses. Let's talk about that security as opposed to what we see many people handle it themselves. Pat, is looking at what kind of security, what kind of data centers there are out there. And you've been to a few of these, I think, and looking at and evaluating the companies we work with. You want to talk a little about cloud security and performance?
Sure. Yeah, it's really impressive. These buildings that we call them data centers is where everything's hosted, and these buildings are incredible. A lot of the times they're built to withstand hurricanes, even in areas where there are no hurricanes. The one I visited here locally actually had a steel wall all the way around. To get in there, it took us a good 20 minutes of background checks and kind of making sure that we are who we say we are. This isn't something that you can really do in your standard environment. These buildings are made to handle everything that they need to do to make sure that your data is secure.
Yeah, I think some additional things are they have a certain compliance obligation with ISO standards that they're following. So they're going to have reporting they have to have assessments, and they oftentimes follow other regulations such as HIPAA or PCI compliance that may be involved for credit cards and things like that. So what they do is really kind of do all the things that a small and medium-sized business can't do, which is provide everything from generators as backups, as Pat alluded to, hurricane-proof buildings, security, things like that. So, we're talking to businesses about making sure that business continuity. This is why we talked about cloud services, because these data centers are able to accomplish things that, otherwise most small and medium-sized businesses can't create for themselves. It's too costly. So let's talk about some current cloud-based services that you're probably already using, and if not, you should be considering, quite frankly. One of the first and easiest ones that we talk to a lot of our accounts about is using voice over IP, and I'll get a little more detail on another slide about that. But that's simply taking away, which would be old POTS lines or old PBX systems, and using cloud-based services for your phones. File sharing, pretty common one. Almost all of us are using Dropbox in one way or another, and I'll talk more about that for ourselves. Whether you're on a Macintosh, whether you're on a PC, or your iPhone, or on a your iPad, you're sharing files in Dropbox, and other file sharing applications provide that for us. Applications out there are probably one of the biggest ones that are converting over to online services for everyone. And Salesforce is a pretty common one that you're using in many businesses, but for a lot of the accountants out there, Quicken Online is pretty much the standard anymore. And I know there's some struggles with a lot of folks who are using it in the sense that it doesn't provide all the great reporting they want to have, or some other components that the application you may have installed on your desktop computer or server is better, but the online versions are becoming a lot more popular. Pat's going to talk a bit more about Office 365. We are highly encouraging a lot of our accounts to utilize this as a cloud-based service, and we'll explain that one as well. And then let's talk about we talk about phones, we talk about file sharing, we talk about application servers, but what about network services, Pat? What about this particular one here as a piece of a pie of a cloud service?
Yeah, Data Backup is a backup solution that we've been implementing to some customers, and it's a really comprehensive solution. It allows you to have on-site backups as well as off-site backups, and the ability to spin up your entire work environment in the event of emergency. If your server crashes, it's replicated into a cloud service, and you would be able to run normally within an hour instead of having multiple days of downtime and potential data loss. So that's been a big one for us, and our customers really love that ability to restore a backup within hours instead of days in some cases.
Great. Let's get into more detail some of this, and actually, on the last bullet on the slide here is getting into a more detailed demonstration of a virtual office using desktops and servers that are actually rolled up in the cloud as well. So let's first talk about phone systems. And traditionally, phone systems, you had probably 2 or 3 different leases or obligations with a phone company that you had to get involved with. You had to lease specific telephone lines. You had to necessarily lease the PBX system that hosted the phone services, and that was stored in your rack somewhere, and maybe in your office. And then you had to lease the phones. With today, and we've done it ourselves about 6 years ago, we actually are using voice over IP phone systems. The phones are IP based, meaning the phone itself is almost a computer. Okay, it has its own IP. You plug it into a wall jack in our office. We have all the same features we had previously, plus a lot more. And Pat, do you want to explain, how we use our voice over IP systems?
Yeah, this winter was a big test for us with our phones, and it was great being able to just take your phone home. Your extension stays the same. You plug it in at home, and we can answer our help desk calls just like we would in the office. We have a lot of employees here with some young kids, and unfortunately, sometimes things come up and they have to head home. So, before they would be not working for a few hours, and now they can just go home, work as they were normally, just pick up the phone and make calls just like they were in the office.
Yeah, I think that the most impressive part for us is knowing that we can be a virtual office in some ways with the phone system. Okay, again, just grabbing our phones. Some people could be here, some people could be elsewhere, and we do like a lot of businesses. We have people who work in Pennsylvania, we have people who work down in Richmond, and so I hit one of our Brian's extension, 1238, and boom, there's Brian picking up his phone in Richmond, just as if he was in the office. So these phone systems, in addition to having this mobility capability, there's no more PBX. So the PBX, which was that big box sitting in the server room, is now hosted by another company for us. So really the only thing we have to have in our office is the phones, or in this case, don't even need to be in the office. We can take them home with us, and there we are. There's an extension with us. There's also capabilities of using SIP phones, which is actually software you can install on your cell phone So you don't even need a hardware device anymore. In some cases, you could just have a software phone or a software running on your desktop computer in lieu of a hardware device phone. So the big thing we found from the mobility and additional capabilities is cost savings. And so if your office still hasn't moved over to this yet, big opportunity for you here in cost savings and mobility by introducing yourselves to voice over IP phones. Let's talk a little about, had a couple questions here. Let me just look real quick. Will there be a copy of this presentation? I'm recording the presentation right now and should be able to provide that for you. And another question, what basic information does EaseTech need to work up a conversion and implementation scenario for a firm?
Yeah, we actually have a form we send out to customers. It's only about 2 pages long. The basic information would be how many employees, what kind of applications do you guys use? You know, is there any, we kind of have a third question, is anything you can think of that we should know? But there's really not much as far as what we need to get things rolling and started. Those are the main things: is applications, users, and something like printers as well.
And you're maybe talking about cloud services. So we're generalize the question here that Jim's asking is, what cloud services are we need? What do we need to do about your company to help implement cloud solutions? But it varies towards what solution we're trying to get to at this point, whether it be something specific as to a phone system or maybe even a full desktop as a service kind of virtual environment. So there are a variety of questions we're going to know specifically about your organization before we just start moving forward, what you're saying. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about cloud sharing. If you have any more questions, please ask them. We'll get to them on every few minutes here. So cloud file sharing, probably one of the most popular ones out there. Along with email, everyone's sharing information in some way or another, and people are using, mostly it's Dropbox. And a very popular one with some of our accountants is FileShare. And Google has their own Google Drive, and Microsoft has OneDrive. So there's a lot of choices out there. One of the things I first try to couch and counsel people on is the security aspects of these systems. And a lot of them don't have, especially Dropbox, the free version, not a lot of security. Very easy to use, very easy to set up, and it's very quick to drop a file somewhere and get it to somebody else. But the challenges are making sure you're using it successfully. So at the end of our presentation, I do have some tips I want to share with you about, making sure you have good practices about sharing those files, whether it be on Dropbox or Google Drive or OneDrive. So do take advantage of these because it's cloud file sharing, but use them in the right way, and I'll share it with you. Actually, I have a question that came in. Are you saying that using Dropbox is not safe? I'm not saying it's not safe. I'm saying there's ways to use it that you could be a little more secure in how you implement it for yourself and your business. So I'll share some ideas for you at the end here on that. Let's talk about the next one that from a cloud service that we'd like to share with people. And Pat, I'm going to ask you to kind of explain a little bit more about Office 365 because it's really another one of those like voice over IP for phone systems, for servers and communication. Office 365 is a really important one for many businesses.
Yeah, Office 365 has been our go-to for companies looking to move their mail server off-site. It's really become kind of a no-brainer for companies, especially smaller ones, as the pricing is very competitive. You have the ability to use versions of Office supplied by Office 365, and you're not using an outdated version. You're on the latest and greatest, and you have the ability to move up when the time comes. You also get 50 gigabyte mailboxes, which is pretty much better than anything else we've seen out there. You can extend your license from your work computer to your home computer as well. It really just eliminates the need for an expensive server in your office. Microsoft is on top of all the updates. They handle everything that your normal IT company may have to handle inside the office there. And the prices, especially for what's the word?
Nonprofits.
Nonprofits is really competitive too.
Yeah, we and again, I think I have a question coming in here. Let me just see. Yeah, so the question is, do you need to have a server to use Office 365? And the answer is no, you do not. That's actually the big benefit. And so when we're talking to customers about upgrading their Exchange servers, the first conversation we want to have with them is, really need to take a hard look at using Office 365. And it's not just you're eliminating a server or reducing your capital expenditures in a server. It's you get these extra things as well. I mean, one of the limitations that we always used to run into with mail servers was how much hard drive space you had on your server, and you'd limit people to how much how big of the
Mailbox.
mailboxes would be. And with Office 365, individuals are able to have now 50 gigabyte mailboxes, which for some organizations is a huge upgrade. In addition to that, there's the licensing. Microsoft has been very, very aggressive of providing licensing. So if you get one license for your work computer, you have 5 extended licenses to other devices that you may have or own even at home. So if you're at a point where you're using mail services and using licensing Microsoft products, Office 365 is going to be a really important one for you to evaluate. And Pat, the low monthly pricing is good, but you can turn that scale it up and down like we talk about. You don't make it an obligation every single year. It's by month in some cases.
Yeah, we can remove a license, add a license within minutes. And, from month to month, if you need maybe you have a project that requires a large number of mailboxes, you could scale up that 1 month and just scale down at the end of that month and get rid of those mailboxes.
So let's talk about some of those costs, because Microsoft Office 365 is a great example of that. So cloud really does a great job of reducing costs. And in a lot of cases, people don't have to, as we described already, do not have to buy new hardware. And that's one of the big challenges that folks run into, is dropping $6K or $12,000 or even $24,000 on a set of new servers they need to get into. It also eliminates the extensive backup requirements across these servers and some of the time it takes to really follow up with all these backups as well. It extends disaster recovery to outside the building. We described the building situation where we had water damage across the street, but quite frankly, when you have your investments of information data services in a secure environment, you're improving your odds of disaster recovery being successful for yourself and not having inside your own building for most cases. And we're also seeing reducing costs because you're not having to buy licenses that are obligations of 1, 2, or 3 years. You're looking at monthly licensing. So when you want to scale, you're really greatly able to reduce those upfront costs. And as I said already, the time it takes to kind of manage these things really get reduced when you're moving a lot of this outside your own office. So let's talk a bit more about a virtual office and get into the idea of not just pieces of the office being virtual or part of a cloud service, but moving the whole office into a virtual environment or to a cloud environment. So a virtual office allows business owners and employees to work from any location by using technology for communication and information sharing. And Pat, before I jump to the next set of slides, we have some businesses that we support right now that are basically of this type, that are either all or mostly have their employees working outside their offices.
Yeah, they've been able to just basically get rid of everything they have in their server room, servers, your AC units, backup devices, anything in there you don't need anymore. And it gives your employees flexibility to work around their schedule. Certain times of the year, especially for our accountants, tax season, they can work late at night if they want to. They can work in the morning. It doesn't really restrict anything with that. They can do whatever they need to do.
I'm even thinking of some of our customers we work with that have reduced the size and of their office space because they've had an interest in expanding people working from home, working in different states. We have a couple different accounts, and we have, I think, 2 accounts that don't even have office space anymore. They don't even have they have shared space they go into when it's needed, but everybody are home workers. Let's talk about some of those virtual cloud-based features that people are looking for, that they enjoy. Device independence. Okay, so a full cloud suite provides no longer a necessity to be obligated to a specific platform. So we have a lot of businesses that want to have Macintoshes and Windows computers. They can do so working off tablets. Facility independence, not being required to work in one location to accomplish all aspects and the technology of databases, servers, and things like that. You can be anywhere. So again, completely remote access, whether they be working that day from home or if they're on vacation, they can get full access to their desktop. A more complete disaster recovery environment, again, with rolling everything in the cloud. That includes your desktop system and your servers. Everything's being backed up already by the servers and the environment that you have in the cloud. And again, obvious thing, as we've talked about already with cloud services, is eliminating servers. So what we want to show you here next is what we call our solution to this. There's other ones out there, and I'm not saying ours is for everybody, but we want to demonstrate the idea of a cloud workspace that we have and its benefits for people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out of my slide presentation program here, and I'm going to switch my screens. And just so you know, as I make this demonstration, I'm working in a Macintosh computer right now. And I am going to switch screens. Everyone should see the Baltimore screen now as opposed to the tree screen. And what I'm going to do is, and Pat, as I'm starting to launch this, one of the first things I'm going to bring up is an application on my Macintosh called Microsoft Remote Desktop. Do you want to explain what that is as an application?
Yeah, this Microsoft Remote Desktop is actually built into probably everyone's computer that they're viewing this on right now. It's a component that allows you to connect to a remote service. Now, this one here is just downloaded straight from the Mac Store, or the Apple Store in this case. Free download provided by Microsoft, and it's a really lightweight program, really easy to use, as you can see here.
And what we're going to do right now is I'm going to launch this. As I launch this, Pat, would you just explain what it is I'm launching into? Okay, so we call it our cloud system, but what is it that we've done to make this happen?
Yeah, what we're doing, we're actually using a encrypted remote desktop connection, and it's actually connecting to what's called a terminal server. A lot of times, some of you in your heads may be thinking, well, my technology or my software doesn't work in a cloud environment. And a lot of vendors will say that. They say, oh, we're not cloud friendly. Our solution is actually just running remote desktop terminal services, which is pretty much used by every single application out there, and it's approved in pretty much every single application that we've encountered. So it's nothing complicated. It's nothing crazy in that regard. It's something that's very familiar to most companies.
Right, so this is a virtualized desktop. It's running. Where is physically is this this running?
Yeah, this data center is actually, I believe,
New York?
Yeah, I think this is actually a New York data center we're connecting to. It's also replicating to a West Coast data center in the case of an emergency there. And as you see here, it's running what you guys are familiar with, Windows 7. There's nothing different about it because it is Windows 7. It's not just an overlay of it. It is actually running the software there.
So I'm looking at the shared H drive, for example. How do shared drives work, or is it what's different or what's the same of what people are working with?
Yeah, it's really easy, a conversion, and honestly, our teaching time for a new user is very, very short because it's nothing new to them. They open up a document like they normally would. In the case of a standard environment, we would move all their data to what we call in the cloud the H drive. So you'd have your F drive, these shared drives, perhaps something called the accounting folder, the shared data folder. Something that your company all shares is now just moved into one location, makes it easy for them to access and share data.
So these are just applications, and so these applications are not running on my Macintosh. This is not a virtual component of my Macintosh. It's remotely in the cloud.
Yep.
So everything I'm seeing here is being delivered for me from a different location in New York.
Yep, and you're running your copy of Office here. It's your license. And what's great is the ability you're not leveraging your own computer's hardware here. It's not hard for this to run I'm actually run this on a 8-year-old computer with no problems. So it's something where you may get a little extra life out of your laptop. And the great thing is, if that laptop were to die, your data is all backed up in the cloud. You just grab something else, and you're off and running just where you were.
So what kind of hardware do people need to have to run this? You said Macintosh, but what else are we using?
We can pretty much run it on anything. We've had people running it on, actually, we don't encourage it, but some people are still running an old Windows XP machine. You can still launch it in there. There's no problem with that. We have people using their tablets, and believe it or not, it's actually pretty functional on the phone. People say, yeah, I'm not going to work on my phone. I've actually done it before, in a crunch time emergency, and connected up to the cloud and had no problems doing what I needed to do. And that's pretty rare to see that ability.
And it's completely customizable. Is this something that we can use? I have a screen. The background desktop screen is Cloud Workspace, but can we personalize this, I guess, and then do other things with it?
Yeah, it's your space to do whatever you want with. You can put your own desktop picture on there, a picture of your kids, your family. That's your personal space. People don't have access to it. The only thing that the H drive would be where your company would share data. Everything else is your own personal space. If you want to put your own personal files in the cloud, you're free to do that.
Um, what I liked about it was it automatically recognizes devices right away. So for example, I don't normally use a mouse, and I plugged in a Dell corded mouse onto this, and it's all recognized right away. I don't have to. There's no configurations or anything else that needed to happen with any of this.
Yeah, that's what's great. Is it really all? I always tell people kind of just worked right out of the box. There's no crazy configuration. You could just pick up a new computer right now. It would redirect your printers. That's the big one. Is people say, I have 5 printers. I don't want to have to set them up in the cloud all the time. Well, what's great is since it is using Microsoft's remote desktop, that has a built-in feature that allows you to basically redirect your printers. So anything you have connected locally is going to show up in the cloud, and you can print to it.
All right, let's take a little bit further here, Pat, and I'm going to leave some of these screens up. I'm going to quit my session here out of my system. I have Excel up, and I have also a web browser up. And what I'm going to do is just quit out of here. One of the benefits of this is that it keeps a session going. So this session will keep running for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I think, something like that.
Actually, longer than that. It'll go up to 2 hours.
So if I were to, my computer was to fail me in some way, or I went somewhere else, I needed to go home, or I needed to pick up a different device, everything I had running, and as I left, it would still be there for me. And I'm going to quit out of my session here. All right, and I'm going to get my iPad out. And bear with me a second as I just get a little program running called Reflector, which allows me to display my iPad onto my computer right now. So,
in the past, Dave and I, we've done these sessions before, and we've shown a PC as well. It's basically the exact same thing. There's actually a cloud workspace icon you use on the PC. We just like to simulate on the Mac, just showing how it can go across platform.
So again, here's RD Client in the lower left-hand corner of my iPad. And Pat, what's the RD Client? People aren't familiar with that.
Yeah, that's the same thing we have here on the Mac, on the actual Apple desktop or laptop you have here, downloaded right from the Apple Store for free.
So launch it the same way. It brings it up, and there's those same screens I just had running. So I had the Excel document running. I had my Chrome browser running as well. They're all there. I can do the same thing. I had a few cells already selected there. I can create a chart, just same manner. I'm using my finger. I don't have a mouse using at all, so I'm using my finger as a pointer. I still have access to my keyboard, so I'm going to quit out of here. I'll go back to that letter and bring my keyboard down. Change the date, and save it back out. So all the same things we saw earlier are there for us as well. So I have my control panel, I have my computer, I have my H drive I was looking at before. And
I think it's a big thing for the iPad to actually have this ability. A lot of people say, I love my iPad at home, but I really can't do my work on it. This really allows you to do that, especially Dave here is just using the touch screen to pull up the keyboard. But if you have the attachment for a Bluetooth
keyboard,
yeah, your iPad is basically the same thing you would do on a desktop.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I think for most people, they look at it like, well, I'm not going to carry my desktop computer with me or a laptop around, but I'm going to be going away and doing some extra work. I need to get back to some things. You can easily get back to it while you're on the road. I mean, the access to this is just as easy as I've shown you here. I can do it from home when I'm on vacation, or again, bad weather situation. I didn't bring my computer home with me, but I have my iPad. I can get and do what I need to.
And I think the big one that we'll try and demonstrate here is also the ability to open it up in a browser page. That's actually great for if you're on the road, if you're accessing from someone's house. Let's say you just need to get some work done. You can do that just by opening up the browser, going to the website, not having to download anything, not having to go to the App Store. That's just for quick access, and it's been great for a lot of our customers that they just don't want to have to worry about planning ahead and saying, where am I going to be? They know where they're going to be. They're going to have internet access. That's all they really need.
All right, I'm going to kill this session just by doing that. And then I'm going to quit out of here. Reflector. Pat, do you want to jump into Chrome here for us? And I'll let you log in for a web browser version of the same session we're doing. So again, trying to show and demonstrate the power of this across different platforms, different applications, and just how straightforward it is to work with. Most importantly, again, from the end user standpoint, all the heavy lifting is being done on the back end with the cloud servers. End users have a multiple way and a secure way of getting to their data wherever they're at with any devices.
And what's great is, as you saw here, there's no need to download components. A lot of these other programs that you may have seen, something like a LogMeIn, something like a GoToMeeting, you'll have to download all these Citrix components, things like that. And a lot of times when you are at a remote location, you may not have admin rights to do that. You may not be allowed to do that on the computer you're on. So the browser is really, really easy to use in a crunch time situation when you just need to get to something on a computer that you don't have your normal cloud icon on.
So you could essentially run this from a Chromebook.
Absolutely, yeah. We have some people doing that.
Yeah, so it really, again, device independence on how this all works.
We've done some testing actually and just built some $200 machines that run this just as fast as it would on a normal laptop or desktop, and that's been pretty cool for us to show customers that and say, hey, this is something you can run the cloud environment on, something that you can literally, if it breaks, you throw it out the window. There's no need to repair it at that point for that cost.
So we have one firm that I think engineers, they have a lot of Macintoshes there, but they have a lot of other needs for specific, I guess, Windows-based applications. Describe that.
Yeah, that's the great one, is that they love the Mac, and as you know, some people they don't like Windows. They don't want to deal with it. So if they have the option to use their Mac, they love that flexibility. But yeah, like Dave said, there's some times where just the application isn't geared entirely for the Mac. So that they may do some of their work outside of the cloud, but then also have the ability to launch into that Windows session and work in the application that they need to get their work done.
We'll go back to our presentation. That's kind of our quick demo of how we're using cloud services with the Ease Cloud Workspace. Let's just revisit and actually see if there's any questions in here. Please address security. A recent break-in and breaching of government databases. Okay, yeah, I think I know what was being asked here by Kathy. So the Office of Personnel Management had a break-in security, and it's kind of hard. I know what you're talking about with this one. If you are familiar with this breach, I actually have a security webinar I do next month that I'll share with everybody and promote a little bit now, but I have a little bit more lengthy conversation about that. The Office of Personnel Management was hacked multiple times over the last several years. In the last 2 weeks, they've disclosed 2 major hacks that happened with their servers. And I think you're asking, how does those breaches align or correspond to cloud services? And my answer to that is it's harder to describe each individual situation. It was certainly a targeted attack on the government. All our businesses sadly are being targeted in some way or manner, and we actually see a lot of small and medium-sized businesses that are targeted as well. We think cloud services offer a better way for most businesses to secure their systems, as we've shown with the data centers that we work with. They're very secure, they follow a lot of protocol, and they do a much better job than most any business could do for themselves. So there's a lot of complexity to answer that question, but I do feel very strongly that cloud services with the right partners offer the right secure solutions that are out there for people. Another question came in. How many can you use different monitors or multiple monitors with this?
Yeah, that's another thing, like I said before, that just works right out of the box. You can plug in, basically you just turn your laptop on. It'll see whatever monitors you have connected already. You have the option to, if you just want it on one screen, you can just basically hit a checkbox and say, I want it on one screen. We've actually seen people use up to 7 monitors. It's probably rare that you'll see that, but this person actually looked like they needed all of them. So
I think this person said they had 4 monitors, so 4 monitors will work just fine.
Yeah, four monitors, no problem.
Yeah, and I set it up on my Macintosh as well, and out of the box I had 2 monitors, and it just recognized both monitors and displays immediately. So it's pretty impressive, pretty easy to use in that way. So let's just describe again some of these features that are in this particular solution. Again, works as we demonstrated to you in any device. Works with existing office printers, multiple displays across shared drives. I think, Pat, you've helped me out, and we've set up that, and I haven't demonstrated this, but even my virtual cloud workspace, I can share from there to my Macintosh. So I create a volume in my virtual system and it saves it to my Macintosh itself. So there's kind of this movement between shared volumes that you'd see in a Windows environment to my Macintosh desktop as well.
Yeah, and even easier than that, you can actually just copy and paste right out of that session. That's actually a security feature. Some companies may say, I don't want that ability for my clients or for my employees, and we can turn that off. But that's actually been a pretty easy one, just to be able to copy and paste right out of the cloud. Let's say you want to just take something off-site to work on locally, you can do that easily.
And that's probably a good one to bring up about security. So a lot of the features we do or talk about can be mitigated or turned off as you described. So we can eliminate anyone being able to copy files to a USB, for example, or to a local drive, and they can only just have access to the session and see what's going on and not move anything else around.
Correct.
Great. And we have a lot of folks that, again, that are looking to use contractors, turn the services off and on as needed during a period of time. Again, we have a lot of accountants that are, seasonally, from January through May, having a lot of folks work with them, and at the end they'll wrap up the computers, put them away for next year, and only turn the services on as needed.
And also in that regard, not only being able to scale employees, but scale the resources on the servers themselves. For instance, during the slow season, you can ramp down how much RAM is allocated to your server, and then during the busy season, you can ramp it up. And that's all done within 5 minutes. Doesn't take any longer than that.
So some of the benefits to summarize here for us includes increased mobility. As we talked about, I think an improved disaster recovery capability that most businesses can provide for themselves today. Not having to invest in new servers really is an important opportunity to reduce capital investments as those come up every few years, been eliminated. As I described, the increased security that I think cloud services provide, and specifically East Cloud Workspace, is tremendous for most businesses. And most importantly, it's allowing a business to focus on their core competencies and not get distracted by technology. And technology should be a way to improve their efficiencies, not get in the way or inhibit. As we described about some of the accountants that we work with, it really is provides the ability to scale up and down as needed during either seasonal or projects, or just knowing that they are going to have more business and they want to be able to not have to make significant capital investments as they scale up. So I want to get to 8 tips for secure cloud file sharing. I think we had a couple questions earlier about that, as well as I was sort of teasing a little bit about using cloud file sharing. Probably one of the more popular cloud services that people use is file sharing. We talked about Dropbox and Citrix File Share. One of the first things when I talk to people about using file sharing is making sure they upgrade to the paid features. Dropbox, for example, is very convenient. It's at no cost to get started. But the paid features in there are really important. And some of those paid features include things like expiration dates for sharing of files and folders. So you can set up a folder to be shared with somebody else, but with the paid version, you can set expiration dates to that information, access to that information. You can assign passwords to an individual. So if you want to make sure they're using secured passwords to the data that you're providing to them, you can assign them specific passwords and only limit them to use those passwords they have access to, and not something they want to create for themselves. You can set permissions. So for example, if you want to have someone just be able to read information and not add any information to your Dropbox account, again, another thing that the paid versions provide for you. And so does File Share and Google Drive, not Google Drive as much, but OneDrive and File Share have these kind of features as well. Another important component when you're file sharing, and this goes along with anything security-wise, is making sure you use long, complex passwords. Pat, what's the number 1 password that is used out there?
Probably password.
That's number 2. The first one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So again, using long, complex passwords are really important, and make sure your passwords are unique to each site that you're using. So what you use in your banking, what you use in your Facebook, what you use in Dropbox, all should be different. Another component that's really important and often an option, and Dropbox, for example, has this as an option, is two-factor authentication. And two-factor authentication is an extra step, or it's actually often called as multi-factor authentication. You have your name and your password. The extra authentication factor here in this case is sending a text message to your cell phone with a number in it that once you log in, you have to put that number in to get access to that folder, file, or in this case to Dropbox. And finally, one last tip on sharing files is making sure your devices that you're using to get access are secure as well. So making sure your iPhone, your iPad, your Windows computer, or your Macintosh is always set to be secure after a certain period of time when it's not in use will prevent others from walking up and getting access to the information and files that you have on there. Let's see if you have any other questions. We did have one about Office 365, Pat. The question was, what size organizations can license Office 365? I guess how big, how small, what is it well suited for?
Yeah, I don't think there's any limitation. Most of our customers are in maybe the 30, 40 range, and that seems to be a good number. But we've seen organizations go much bigger than that without any problems. It really just depends on what kind of licensing you're looking to do, and that's all stuff we can speak to you about personally if you have any questions on that. We can analyze your company and see if that makes sense for your organization.
Okay, great. I think we answered a lot of the questions that came up along the way. I am sensitive to everyone's time here, so I will wrap it up. I do want to mention, as I did a little bit earlier, is our next webinar is on July 16th. Again, like today, it'll be from 12 to 1. I think it's on a Thursday, and the title of our webinar is Keeping Your Business Secure Online. And in this particular webinar, I spent an hour with Matt Schmidt, one of our other directors here, about cybersecurity, threats to small and medium businesses, and what you can do to better protect yourself online. So I'll share an invite to you with a follow-up email, and you also should be hearing from me with some announcements in our monthly newsletter as well. So again, I want to thank you for joining us today. Pat, thanks for giving me a hand.
Thanks, everyone.
If you have any questions, please, by all means, send me an email at dave@eastech.com. You can check out some more information. We provide weekly blog posts about security, cloud services, as well as productivity tips with your ISO devices. And finally, we'll have an email coming out with a survey, and please give us some feedback. So again, thank you very much for your time today, and have a great day.